In the heart of a lush valley, there was a small village surrounded by vast fields of crops and pastures where animals grazed. The villagers lived simple lives, relying on the canal that flowed through the village to irrigate their crops. The water from the canal was crystal clear, and it provided the villagers with a bounty of fresh produce. Life in the village was peaceful and happy. The villagers spent their days tending to their crops, raising their animals, and socializing with one another. Children played in the fields, laughing and chasing each other through the rows of crops. The villagers were content with their simple lives, and they were grateful for the blessings they had received. However, one day, disaster struck. The water in the canal suddenly stopped flowing, and the villagers were left in a state of panic. Without the water, their crops began to wither and die, and their animals grew thirsty and hungry. The villagers tried to find a solution to the problem, but they were unable to determine why the water had stopped flowing. The leader of the village, a wise and kind elder, decided to send a man to investigate the cause of the problem. The man, whose name was Thomas, set off along the canal, determined to find the source of the trouble. As Thomas walked along the canal, he noticed that the water had stopped flowing at a point far upstream. He continued to walk until he came to a large stone that had been placed across the canal, blocking the flow of water. Next to the stone stood a massive giant, its eyes fixed on Thomas. Thomas was terrified, but he knew that he had to return to the village and tell the others what he had found. He turned and ran back downstream, not stopping until he reached the village. When Thomas arrived back in the village, he told the others about the giant and the stone that had blocked the flow of water. The villagers were shocked and frightened by the news, and they didn't know what to do. The leader of the village decided that a group of men should go to the giant's cave and try to reason with it. Perhaps, they thought, the giant would be willing to remove the stone and allow the water to flow once again. A group of brave villagers set off towards the giant's cave, determined to save their village. When they arrived at the cave, they called out to the giant, challenging it to come out and fight. The giant emerged from the cave, its massive body towering over the villagers. It was enormous, with thick, scaly skin and sharp teeth. The villagers were terrified, but they stood their ground, ready to fight. The battle was fierce, but the villagers were no match for the giant. One by one, they fell to the ground, defeated. The giant was too powerful, and the villagers were forced to retreat back to their village. The villagers were devastated by their defeat. Without the water from the canal, their crops were dying, and their animals were growing weaker by the day. They didn't know what to do, and they were beginning to lose hope. Just when it seemed like all was lost, a kind and clever princess came to the village. She had heard about the villagers' plight and had come to offer her help. The princess gathered the villagers together and asked them to tell her about their problem. When they had finished, she thought for a moment and then said, "I think I have a solution. We can make a pair of shoes for the giant. If we can make it happy, perhaps it will remove the stone and allow the water to flow once again." The villagers were skeptical at first, but the princess convinced them to give her plan a try. They gathered together and began to work on the shoes. It took them many days, but finally, they had a pair of massive shoes that they hoped would fit the giant. The princess took the shoes and set off towards the giant's cave. When she arrived, she called out to the giant and asked it to come out. The giant emerged from the cave, and the princess offered it the shoes as a gift. The giant was delighted with the shoes and thanked the princess for her kindness. As a reward, it agreed to remove the stone from the canal and allow the water to flow once again. The princess returned to the village, where she was greeted as a hero. The villagers cheered and thanked her for her cleverness and bravery. The water began to flow through the canal once again, and the villagers were able to irrigate their crops and water their animals. The village was saved, and the villagers were able to live happily once again. They never forgot the kindness of the princess and the bravery of the villagers who had fought against the giant. And they always remembered the lesson they had learned, that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and that with kindness, bravery, and cleverness, even the most difficult problems can be solved.